Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 5, Episode 41. Austin, we have one more game on our hands between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns to wrap up the 2020 regular season, actually in the year 2021 right now, but still some unfinished business left in the regular season. The Pittsburgh Steelers have some starters that are going to be resting in this game, namely Ben Roethlisberger, the starting quarterback. We'll discuss that in more detail as we go on, but why don't we just jump into some news as we get things going here. The game was not necessarily in doubt, but there were some questions about it going forward with a couple of members of the Browns, one of their coaching staff, and one practice squad player testing positive for COVID a couple of days ago. They had 0 new positive cases as of 10:14 on New Year's Day. So it looks like the game is still on for Sunday, and they have practiced at this point today. So if there aren't any new cases now, it's not good. But so far, it seems like we're okay there.
Yeah, this game should be going on. I think the cases for this have come to a close. Hopefully, we'll see tomorrow morning if the Browns have like a surprise new case, and that would probably put a damper on things being Saturday. Yeah, I really hope that a game that means nothing doesn't screw the Steelers in some way.
The Steelers also, based off of last week, have knowledge of all but one of their 2021 opponents. It's worth mentioning if there's a 17th game added this upcoming season, the Steelers would play the Ravens twice, the Browns twice, the Bengals twice, in addition to the Chicago Bears, Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs, Green Bay Packers, Buffalo Bills, and the Seattle Seahawks, if that's a 17th game. Due to cross-conference play for the additional game, we would play the winner of the NFC West. And then the only team in question is the Titans or Colts, whoever wins the AFC South, which we will learn after Sunday. In additional news, the Steelers are right now the odds-on favorite to land former Washington football quarterback Dwayne Haskins. The former first-round pick was released less than 2 seasons after being drafted. He was reportedly not taking his job seriously enough, which led to his benching earlier in the season. He also was apparently arriving late to meetings constantly, not preparing enough for games, and was also not playing well at the end of his tenure with the team. So Haskins, a guy I looked at coming out of the draft, immense arm talent, but it's become clear. Clear after being released that he was not taking the job seriously enough. So, Austin, what are your thoughts on Dwayne Haskins and the possibility of him being the next Pittsburgh Steeler?
It makes me want to throw up a little bit in my mouth, not going to lie. He is not the mold of a Pittsburgh Steeler. He is not someone I'd be excited about. I mean, he has character issues. It's not someone that the Steelers should go after, and it honestly baffles me that the Steelers are favorites to land him. I would sooner bet he'd go out of the NFL than he signs with Pittsburgh. I think it's I understand the thought process. Steelers need quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger old. Mason Rudolph not answer. Dwayne Haskins. But no, that's not how this is gonna go. If anything, he is not being signed to an active roster. That's for the Steelers. The only thing he'd be signed to is a practice squad, and that's not going to happen. I'd bet money down on it.
I don't think that Haskins signs with another team this year. I think the earliest you see him sign is in a couple months. And it's also worth mentioning he let go of his agent, but I don't think that he's going to sign with anyone right now. He was basically given one last shot, and he immediately destroyed it. So, he had strike 1 when he was benched, strike 2 at the strip club incident, and then strike 3 he immediately didn't put any work into that game against the Panthers, clearly, but if you watched it, and he was cut. And, it's a massive bust for Washington. I thought it was a good pick. He has the arm talent. I've always thought that, but, the side of football, does he really care about it, comes into question here.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't want to take the risk with him. Some other team can do it. He seems like I'd say maybe the Dallas kind. I feel like he could go to Dallas.
And make no mistake about it, there are guys that can right the ship when they get a second chance, a change of scenery, but it doesn't happen this quickly. This isn't something that changes overnight.
No, he needs to get more focused. Needs to probably mature a little bit, and then if he wants to make it in the NFL, of course he might just be done with it. Who knows? Who knows what's going on in the mind of Dwayne Haskins? But that's not a good look for him right now. And I agree with your sentiment that he's probably not going to sign with the team by the end of this year. He will not find a team until the start of next year.
TJ Watt was named team MVP for the second consecutive season, joining the likes of James Harrison, Hines Ward, Levon Kirkland, Jerome Bettis, and Terry Bradshaw as the only Steelers in team history to win such an award in back-to-back seasons. If it wasn't him, I'd have voted for Ben, but I think it was a very fine choice.
Yeah, Watt is very good. He leads the league in sacks at 15. Just an absolute monster, and he's definitely deserving. I understand why he won it.
At this time next year, he could be third or fourth in team history in sacks after just 5 seasons.
He could also be the highest paid edge rusher in the NFL.
Probably will be, I would imagine. Break the bank, that guy.
At this point next year, someone else might have been paid.
Actually, that's know what he will. How about he will have been the highest paid edge defender for 12 hours
for a few months
for 12 hours.
Yeah, probably. Oh man.
One unfortunate bit of news to report: Steelers offensive lineman Derwin Gray was placed on waivers last week, and he was claimed by the Jacksonville Jaguars, which means the first team in waiver priority put a claim in on him. So I don't think it's unfair to assume that more teams did. Every year, Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin make the decision to cut one player, and it always seems to come back to bite them. They always get picked up. Last year, it was Fred Johnson and Tuzar Skipper, and I'm forgetting who it was 2 years ago, but this seems to happen every year. Matthew Thomas, that's right. That ended up working out okay, but then again, that wasn't the point at the time. It's happened at least once a year the last few years, so here we are again. The Steelers, having lost, they cut Stefan Wisniewski, who hasn't been that great this year, but they released him and a somewhat promising young interior offensive lineman who could have been a nice backup piece for this team with an aging offensive line, and it's just a piece that you hate to lose, and in my opinion, could have been avoided.
It really could have been. There had to be someone else you could have cut instead for to grayscales.
J-Ron Elliott.
I don't know.
J-Ron Elliott, I would have cut.
J-Ron Elliott or Antoine Brooks. I know you need the inside linebacker depth, but Antoine Brooks hasn't even been playing that many snaps anyway. Sean Davis. There's a bunch of guys you could have went with. It's just a bunch of dummy moves when you don't have offensive lineman depth. And I mean, I wish him well. I have obviously no ill will against Derwin Gray. Just sucks. I honestly knew it though. Like I knew he was going to be claimed. Offensive linemen are a dime a dozen, and if there's like any promise, teams want them. And I honestly thought that he was going to make it past the first pick. I thought he was going to make it to Cincinnati at 4 or 5 or 6, wherever they are, 3. Because Cincinnati is in desperate need of offensive linemen. But I'd be really interested to see what other teams put in waiver claims for him. No one reported on it, so we don't know. He's not that high pristine. He's not very. He's obviously not like a high sought after player, so he didn't get a lot of reporting on him. But I would have been interested to see who put in claims for.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that kind of stuff isn't made public, because I think it'd be really interesting to know.
Would be, yeah.
But yeah, with Gray going, another young offensive lineman that the Steelers have plucked away, and it really makes you wonder if they could have cut someone else instead. Just questionable roster management, I suppose. And where we sit here now, I know that hindsight is 2020, but it really feels like you could have made a different decision there. And offensive linemen, like you said, are at a premium, especially late in the year. Teams that are out of the playoffs are looking to build towards 2021. We saw that with Fred Johnson last year, and we see it again. I just would try to avoid doing that with offensive linemen, especially given where they are at this point in time, since it seems like this is a rebuilding group at this point. Although I will say it's not impossible for them to circle back. Look at Gerald Hawkins. He returned. He's not the most promising guy, but he's at least depth that is familiar with the team. So I guess if you want to point to that, it is not impossible that Derwin Gray could be back with the Steelers at some point, but you'd rather this doesn't happen.
Yeah, I also kind of feel bad for Derwin Gray. Mans went from one of the best teams to literally the worst. Like that's pretty tough. Even on Sunday, he was rooting for us. He posted a picture and was like, "Let's go boys," or something like that. And it just makes me sad. Wanted to be there.
And another bit of unfortunate news, the Steelers could be facing the loss of a draft pick after the NFL learned of a post-game celebration by the players in the locker room that did not have masks being worn. The New Orleans Saints are the closest comparison for punishment because they are also repeat offenders. Remember, the Steelers were fined earlier this season for not wearing masks on the sidelines against the Ravens. The Saints were punished for their locker room celebration without masks, and they lost a 7th-round pick and are appealing, but we do not currently know if the Steelers will face similar discipline. It took about 2 weeks for the Saints to get that discipline handed down, so that's about the time frame we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I hope not. I feel like the Steelers of all teams need a break, dude. Like, for COVID stuff, like, we already got messed up with our schedule and stuff. Give us a bit of a break. I'm sure if that happens, the rest of the NFL will be like, why are you giving him a break? The Saints, you took away a 7th-round pick from the Saints. And it's like, yeah, well, did you mess with the Saints' schedule? Like, you messed with the Steelers? No. Sure, I'm sure we're going to get a punishment. It's going to really piss me off. And we're going to be punished more than the Ravens or Titans did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's more my issue with it. Is I would be more frustrated that the Titans and Ravens will have done things far more egregious than what the Steelers have done. It could end up with less of a penalty because of it, and that would upset me personally. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah, you have to move on. It is what it is.
All right. So as we get into this game, the Steelers, having won the division, don't really have a ton to play for at this point in time. So they could get the number 2 seed if they win and the Bills lose. But with that not being a guarantee, the Steelers have decided to rest Ben Roethlisberger and are apparently going to rest several other players. It looks like it's going to be Marquise Pouncey, Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, and possibly others as locks to not play. There could be others, but we don't know at this time. So your thoughts on that, Austin? You think that's the right decision?
I think it's the right decision. Playing for the 2nd seed over the 3rd seed doesn't really make sense to me. Not this year. Maybe in a year where you got like normal amount of rest. The Steelers did not get a normal amount of rest this year because they didn't really get a bye week. I think it makes sense to stick with the 3rd seed. It doesn't really affect much going forward. I think it's the right move. I personally am a fan of benching the players you are here, and I'd bench basically as many as you can. It's going to be interesting to see what the Steelers do. With the new rules with activating practice squad players or putting them on the active roster temporarily, we could see more inactive than normal, but also it's kind of scary because you can only do that twice with players on the practice squad, so the Steelers might opt not to do that in case of emergency, in case one of their players gets hurt, and then they need to elevate someone from the practice squad. It's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers handle this going forward, if they make the lot inactive or not.
Yeah, because you could make several players inactive. I think you could do 5 to 7, but you could also dress guys and not play them in case of emergency too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It is very interesting. I'm kind of curious to see what they do, but obviously the fewer they have to play, the better, but it's also not a preseason game, so some guys are going to have to play and some will be exposed. So, you hope you take your picks and hopefully everyone gets out healthy. But for the time being, why don't we get to the rest of the injury report right now? You want to take that?
Sure. So Chris Boswell with the groin has been ruled out. This has put the Steelers in quite an odd position for a game that doesn't matter. Because they've already elevated Matthew Wright twice this year, they would have to bring him to the active roster permanently. They'd have to actually call him up, and that would likely mean Chris Boswell would have to go to IR if that happens. With that being said, this is a pointless game that you don't need to win. So you might bet on either Jordan Berry kicking or Corliss Waitman from the practice squad instead, which are both punters. You might just try and do that, or you might go for 2 all game. I don't know. Going for 2 all game kind of sounds pretty fun. Regardless, it's put the Steelers in an odd position. I would not put Chris Boswell to IR, though, but we'll see how they decide. It could be very bad. It could be this. It might have to happen if it's a really bad injury. It's been nagging him for a little while now. Other than that, Terrell Edmonds has a shoulder injury and has been ruled out. Deontay Johnson was held out of practice Friday with an illness, but he doesn't have a designation. I guess that was just for precautionary reasons in case he had the Ronies. And then the last thing I wanted to mention for the Steelers is Bobby Spills is actually eligible to return this game. I haven't heard any news on him. I don't know if he is going to be activated for this game. My idea is that he's likely not going to be.
If he was, they would have activated him already because he
exactly.
Yeah.
The Steelers have no reason to clear out a roster spot right now. They'd have to cut someone, and I doubt they're going to do that for this game. But he is eligible in case something happens on like Saturday for some reason. Then go to the Browns side of things. The Browns placed Malcolm Smith, Denzel Ward, Harrison Bryant, Andrew Sandeo, and Carl Joseph on the COVID reserve list on Wednesday and Thursday. On Friday, the Browns had no positive tests, so they are good. Hopefully tomorrow being Saturday, they'll be good and stuff. So going forward from that, offensive lineman Nick Harris, knee is out. Todd Davis with an ankle is questionable. He was limited Friday. Kendall Lamb with an illness is questionable. He did not participate in practice on Friday. Sion Takitaki with an ankle is questionable. He was limited all week in practice. And then Wyatt Teller with an ankle is questionable. He was also limited in practice. If they are down Nick Harris and Wyatt Teller, they're going to be very thin at offensive linemen, and I'm pretty sure Kendall Lamb is going to play, so I think they'll be all right, but they're going to be very thin if Teller and Harris already can't, but if Teller can't go, they're going to be fairly thin. Do you have anything to say about the injury report?
No, not really at this time. I mean, the Browns are getting pretty much their entire receiving core back, but they've lost some key pieces on the defensive side, so that's kind of interesting. And, it bodes kind of well for the Steelers. But, again, a lot of backups are going to be playing. And I think that there's really just a couple of key storylines when it comes to this game. We actually have a guest that we brought back, John Gehring, who we've had on the show a handful of times over the last few years to talk about the Browns whenever they are either in town or the Steelers are going to Cleveland. And we had him on the show. And we thought he provided some great insight on the Browns and kind of the way they've played this season since they last met the Steelers earlier this season. So I guess, Austin, we can kind of turn it over to our interview with him if you'd like, and then we can come back on the other end and talk about the Steelers' perspective.
Sounds good to me.
Alrighty then. We'll be right back on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. We have a guest joining us today. Been on the show a handful of times in the past and now joining us for the second time this season. It's a pleasure to welcome back, previously of 89.1 The Point, now having graduated, John Gehring. It is my pleasure to welcome you back to the show. Congratulations on graduating. How are you feeling, my man?
Feeling awesome, man. It's so great to be back here. I always know that it's Steelers Browns week when we get to talk on this show, so I'm really excited for that this weekend. And
even more reason to be excited as we approach the final week of the regular season. The Browns, actually, the situation is reversed. Usually, the Steelers are the team that has something to play for between these two teams late in the year. But this time, the Browns have everything to play for in this one. Currently in the playoffs as we stand today. Now, they have not clinched, so they will need to win or lose and get help in order to make the playoffs. But Week 17, the Browns are currently sitting at, 10-5 with an opportunity to make the playoffs for the first time since 2002, John. It must feel kind of crazy where you guys are this close, but yet still so far, there's still one more game, one more week that needs to be played. How are you feeling right now?
Well, you said it. So close yet so far. I'm feeling good considering. I think Browns fans in general are, after being on such a roller coaster this season, all the ups and downs, and we're at 9-4 and basically like a week away from clinching, and then last week again a week away from clinching, losing to the lowly Jets. I mean, it's been such a roller coaster, and I know Browns fans feel like that this team should have clinched the postseason by now. And so there's a little bit of frustration there. But heading into this week's game, just considering all of the circumstances surrounding it, with the Steelers not playing starters so much, that's going to make us feel, as fans, make us feel a lot more confident about this one coming in. And it doesn't matter what happened last. The NFL, you can't get too high, you can't get too low. I truly believe that, and both of our teams are a testament to that this season. But I'm feeling good about it, because if you told me at the beginning of the season that we would just need to win one game at the end to make it into the postseason, I would take that.
Indeed, and picking up from where we were the last time we met, the Colts were 4-1 heading into that first Pittsburgh game, and they got beaten pretty handily, 38-7 in that game. At 4-2, a lot of people were kind of dismissing the Browns at that point. They ended up losing another game 2 weeks later to the Raiders in a very odd. The Browns have played in a lot of bad weather games this year. Very interesting to say the least. And then they come out, win 4 straight, lose a heartbreaking game to the Ravens on Monday Night Football, probably the best game of the year to this point. And then they win another game. So they ended up winning 5 out of 6 games down the stretch before losing last week, where the team has kind of silenced some doubters. And I think at this point, I can say that from what I've seen so far, this team, even though it might not be the best in the AFC, it's one of the better ones in the conference and is certainly deserving of one of the playoff spots. The issue being, as we've already touched on, this is a deep conference with a lot of good teams. One team out of the 7 participants, there's going to be an 8th team that is deserving but will not be able to make it this year. Oh, sorry.
Are you there, buddy?
Sorry, had an issue with the website here. What I wanted to ask you, John, was what were your thoughts on the team as they were putting together that win streak down the stretch here, and prior to going into the Jets game, that loss to the Ravens, was that the best you had felt about a loss in a long time?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that game was really bizarre in a lot of ways. And coming in, I think we knew. I mean, I was looking at some of the analysts' predictions, some of, for what it's worth, America's prediction coming into that one, and people were just talking about how hot the Ravens were, and then we saw it on the field that night. Obviously, the Browns secondary got shredded again, and then Lamar Jackson is just with his legs is an unbelievable talent. But the Ravens are hot right now, and I think there's a lot more to say for that than there is for records. And I don't care how the Ravens started; they're still one of the top teams in the AFC. And that game, that was a tough loss because of the way it ended. But at that point, I was still feeling really, really good about the Browns, and I still am. You mentioned winning 5 out of the last 6. I mean, and with some of those games, really impressive victories like that win over the Giants on Sunday Night Football, where the defense just played great. This team has been entering its stride late in the season, and last week I think was just a bump in the road that I don't think everyone should take so harshly, at least coming into this final win and you're in kind of game.
I mean, let's be real here. You guys had no wide receivers for that game. That's not your fault. Like, if you guys had wide receivers, I think you easily clap up the Jets. You had 3 wide receivers on your active roster for the game that had never caught a pass as a Cleveland Brown. Like, that's pretty tough to overcome, even if you're playing a team like the Jets. Being without a entire skill position essentially is tough for an NFL team to overcome. I don't think that loss to the Jets should be taken with any like you guys were down those wide receivers and then the inside linebackers too. It wasn't just the wide receiver room that you were down.
Yes, and that really hurt. The Jets' ground game was more effective than normal because of that. And you spoke about the wide receiver position, Austin. I think that makes yeah, that made a huge difference. And people were saying, "Oh, just run Nick Chubb, just run the ball. That's what they do best anyway." Well, when there's no threat to pass the ball, it's really I don't know. Football is a complementary game. I mean, as you guys know, with the Steelers kind of being down in their rushing attack as of late, and during that 3-game losing streak, especially, it's such a complementary game. And when you're missing an entire position group like that, like we had Austin Hooper, the tight end receiving. Other than that, I mean, everybody was out. So yeah, I mean, of course, that's just a product of the times we're in too with COVID and everything. But it was not one of those games that you look at and you just get alarmed because the team played so poorly. You more chalk it up to that. You're right.
On the note of the COVID stuff, are you still worried for this Pittsburgh game with the COVID, the players you have on COVID reserve? Because now you've gotten the wide receivers back, other than, I think, Ryan Switzer, who's sitting on the practice squad. But you now lose Denzel Ward and Malcolm Smith, and I'm pretty sure B.J. Goodson did not come off. You could correct me if I'm wrong on that.
He's still on there as of today.
Yeah, he's still on as of today. Are you concerned going into this Steelers game without Ward and without Malcolm Smith and the guys that are still on the COVID reserve?
There's also two safeties out too. Carl Joseph and Andrew Sendejo are both out too.
Yes, I'm worried about the COVID list, absolutely, because those players are important for us. But I'm also worried about the other injury list. I mean, we can't forget that injuries still happen, like real, football-related injuries. And Sione Takitaki, he's questionable right now, as is Kendall Lamb. And if we are out of them, then I think that'll... On the defensive side of the ball, Taki has been one of the most underrated linebackers, I would say, in the AFC this season. And if the Browns have to go without him, that linebacker group is already more vulnerable than the rest of the defense, in my opinion. So I'm concerned about that. But yeah, the COVID list has really decimated this team, and even to take it a step further, having the facility closed like every other day can't be beneficial for this team as they're trying to make a playoff push and head into a game that's kind of like our Super Bowl for at least for the first time in a decade, to have a win or go home kind of game, almost like a playoff game for this team. So I think that it's poor timing, but this team can overcome these players who appears that they'll be missing, but it's also the injury list that's concerning me, and the Browns are going to be shorthanded coming into this one.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to point out
something I want to look at.
I wanted to point out, since you mentioned his name, John, that Sione Takitaki, according to PFF grading, has the best grade on the Browns defense for a run defense, with an overall grade of 88.6, which is basically elite. He's an elite run defender this year, and no one else on the Browns defense is within 10 points of a grade on run defense of him. So he has been one of the best run defenders in the NFL this year.
And that doesn't surprise me. I mean, he can also drop back and defend the pass too. He's that effective of a linebacker. But the Browns have been really liking to stack the box and try and dominate up front. That's been their defensive game plan all year long, with a weaker secondary. So he's really the key to he's where it starts for that Browns defense, which is up front and in the trenches, and making open tackles is something that he's really good at against the run, if they do end up breaking that front line. So he's a really important player for us, and we could just have to hope that whoever steps in and takes his place, if he is out, is just as effective. He's able to go.
And you mentioned that front line. There's a lot of reasons to talk about Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph for this week's game, but I wanted to focus more in on the tactical aspect of the fact that Myles Garrett is one of the best defensive players in the league. And last year, before that incident, was on pace for a double-digit sack season. He was one sack away from what would now be his third straight double-digit sack season of his career. And he's at 13 right now, just 2 off of T.J. Watt's season-leading 15 sacks. And Garrett has been a fantastic player for you guys. Obviously, he's grading as the best player on the defense, playing at an elite level this year. He's been as advertised when it comes to his ability as a player. What has having him meant for this Browns team, especially this season?
For the defense, he's been everything. He's been the pass rusher. He's been the run stopper. Of course, he specializes in pass rushing, one of the sack leaders in the NFL. He's the leader up front there of the line that has some other underrated players, and Sheldon Richardson up there has also been playing really, really well. Obviously, this is an extremely awkward week. We think the holidays are awkward for us. Like, imagine this reunion. I'm gonna have to turn my head. I don't know how this is gonna go, but on the football field, he's a game wrecker. He's a potential game wrecker. He's always a stripped sack threat, and he's able to get his big hands up there and just get leverage on tackles and get out there and get after the quarterback and at least hurry the quarterback. And that's one thing we always talk about sacks, but those hurries and forcing throws earlier than, collapsing the pocket, forcing them quarterbacks to throw earlier than they're comfortable throwing is so important too. And that's what's helped the Browns secondary, which is just so important to give them all the help that they need. They're depleted too. So Garrett has been everything, and it really starts and ends with him this weekend, as weird as it is, ending up going up against Drew.
And I also wanted to point out that Olivier Vernon has been enjoying a really nice bounce back season too. The defense has had a lot of players step up for them, and obviously one of them being on the COVID list in Denzel Ward. With him being out, do you have concerns about the back end of the Browns defense? I know you said that that's been the unit that hasn't played great this season. Where are you at with them?
I am concerned because, from Ward to Williams we got some players back there. We really do have some players back there, but without Ward this week, that hurts. And there's been some improvements throughout the season, some mild improvements from these guys, but I heard it on the Browns broadcast last week. They just were pointing out the fact that this secondary is not really an NFL secondary, and I don't blame guys like Sineho and now the other name is slipping my mind that I was going to bring up. I don't blame them. They're playing their hearts out back there. They're playing hard, but they're like backups. They're like NFL backups, and they're being asked to step into this type of big situation, and they have all year. So I give them credit for at least hanging tough in there. But this week is going to be a challenge, unlike the past several, because you got big-time receivers here with a lot of speed and even some size on that Steelers team, and that's the concern. I'm not concerned about the Steelers' rushing attack. I'm concerned about your passing attack, even with a backup quarterback. I'm still concerned about some of the weapons you guys have and how they match up against our secondary.
Good thing going for you guys is that you're getting Ronnie Harrison back. He was activated from IR either yesterday or today. I forget which now. But he should be helpful without Joseph and Sendeo to play there. Because he was really good. You guys got him for the Jaguars for pretty cheap for a fifth rounder, and he came in and played really well for you guys comparatively.
I hope he's 100% this week. We'll see. And again, it's if that secondary can stay disciplined and play a physical game and jam those receivers before they get out in space, I think that'll benefit them. But it's definitely, if you're going to point out one major point of concern in this game, that's where I would start, is that matchup between the Steelers' pass attack and our secondary.
Yeah, you were very right to not be concerned about the Steelers' running game. I don't think there's anyone that should be, but that's a question.
Really?
That's something for Austin and I to discuss more at length another time.
I'm not sure Alabama is scared of the Steelers' rushing game.
I'm not sure Idaho is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
In any case,
Benny Snell has had some good games, right? I mean,
a couple.
I guess I don't know.
He had
Yeah.
he had one. He had a good game at the start of the year, and he had a good game against the Bengals a couple weeks ago. But there's John. When I tell you that there's problems everywhere with the running game, there's issues everywhere with the running backs, with the actual plays, with the design, with the actual execution. It'd be one thing if you could look at a running game and say we can fix it if there's one thing wrong or two things wrong, but there's something wrong everywhere. So, I mean, maybe
It's tough.
maybe you could take lessons from let's switch to the other side of the ball now. The way the Cleveland Browns run the football. And I know last week was not ideal. Their running game didn't produce a lot, and they weren't given the ball a ton, but there were reasons for that as we've outlined. It all starts up front with two of the highest graded players in terms of performance this year are guards Joel Bitonio and guard Wyatt Teller. Teller, as a matter of fact, John, I don't know if this is the case now, but through the first 8 weeks of the season, he was the highest graded PFF lineman of all time through that point of a season. He has been outstanding. And in terms of a team, I think the Browns have a top 3 pass blocking and run blocking offensive line this year. Those guys have been as advertised and even more this year.
Yeah, and it helps to have a physical running back like Nick Chubb, who you can really hit those holes hard. But I give a lot of credit to Stefanski and the coaching staff for what they've been able to do with this offensive line. Obviously, in the offseason, making some moves, and of course Conklin. That's the big one. That's the sexy one that everybody talks about. But no, like you talk about, Wyatt Teller they run the ball his way more than half the time, and it's been working. And it hasn't been those long, 40-yard touchdown runs that you see on the highlight reel, as much as it's been 7 and 8 yards from Nick Chubb just over and over again, and getting themselves into second and short, third and manageable, if that, and that's been the recipe for success up front. It started up front and with the running game, and it's opened up play action for the passing game, and that's the formula to victory. And that's what the Browns, when they've been playing well and when they've scored north of 30 points, that's what they've been doing well, is getting chunk rushing plays on first down, getting 5+ yards on first down on the ground, and they need to follow that formula again this week.
And let's talk a bit about those two talented running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Both are very talented in their own right. Kareem Hunt, I believe, led the league in rushing his rookie season, and Nick Chubb has been one of the most productive backs in the NFL. In fact, probably the most productive back outside of Derrick Henry the last 2 to 3 years. What do these guys bring to the table that's different from one another, or are they almost just clones of each other?
I think they're a lot different. I know that they both have a good combination of power and speed. But besides that, I mean, you got Kareem Hunt, who's more of a third down back, who's more of a guy now who can catch screen passes, get out of the backfield and catch balls. He's also a great pass protector, too, on third down and on play action passing plays. And I like how he can get a yard in a third and short. Actually, both backs can, but they've been using Hunt for that a lot, especially. They're both a good combination of speed and power, but they're so complementary of each other at the same time that it's just worked magically. And I love how Kareem Hunt, the most surprising thing and the most important thing is how he's embraced his role. You talk about him leading the league in rushing with the Kansas City Chiefs his first season. Well, he's come into this situation as basically the second back to Nick Chubb, and he's embraced the role of that. He's embraced being, third down guy. He's embraced getting dirty and blocking for pass protecting for Baker Mayfield. He's just been team first, and I don't think a lot of people expected that coming in from him. But then he also gets his opportunities to shine. He's had a couple of great athletic runs, and he can finish runs too, and that's what I'm so excited about, is this two-headed rushing attack is, I think, gives the Browns a huge advantage over more than half of the teams that they play, because they're able to run the ball and do so with such this unpredictably with two different rushers.
It's definitely tough having to go against a team with a 1A and 1B. Like you said, Kareem Hunt led the league in rushing yards not too long ago. It's like Nick Chubb. I was a big fan of Nick Chubb. I've been a big fan of Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb gets a lot of disrespect, and it hasn't really stopped because now he splits time with Kareem Hunt, so people get his stats and stuff, and it really bothers me because Nick Chubb is a really, really good running back. But yeah, it's really good what you guys got going there when you have a 1A and 1B. It makes it really tough to stop, especially with an offensive line that's been revitalized and plays really well for you guys. Even without Wyatt Teller, who's been one of the best guards in PFF history grading-wise, you guys have been running pretty effectively.
Yeah, and without Nick Chubb for several games there as well. I mean, that Dallas victory, I remember when the Browns beat Dallas, I think it was 49 to something. They put up more points than they have in a long time. And they played most of that game after a Nick Chubb injury. So it just goes to show how, 1A and 1B. Well, 1B steps up and he shows how he can be a starting NFL running back as well. And I'm really excited about that, too. And just how, I mean, Nick Chubb, it's kind of funny. He's one of the most humble, soft-spoken guys in the league. He doesn't talk. He doesn't, I think that's where a lot of the disrespect comes from in some ways is just how he flies under the radar. But I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that allows for a laser-sharp focus that this offense needs. And it earns a guy like Kareem Hunt, who's more of a veteran, it earns his respect, and it's just makes them able to work so well together, and just as a cohesive unit, this whole rushing attack is, including the offensive line, is just clicking.
That's kind of crazy to think about too, because Chubb was the leading guy at Georgia after Todd Gurley left, but even though he was the starter ahead of Sony Michel. Michel was the guy drafted before him, and Nick Chubb rode second fiddle to his cousin Bradley out in Denver when they both got drafted the same year. I remember hearing a story about Baker Mayfield showing up to Cleveland on the plane after the draft, and Nick Chubb was with him, and everyone was asking Nick Chubb about like his cousin or something like that. Like someone thought he was his cousin, and he was like, no, or like everyone was asking where Baker Mayfield was. No one knew who Nick Chubb was, and here he is, one of the best running backs in the NFL. I just thought that was kind of funny.
It goes to show you just never know. And some of those draft picks, give them a lot of credit for that one right there, and it's turned out really well for the Browns.
So let's shift to Baker Mayfield now, a guy that the last time we talked had kind of an up and down season to that point. Played his worst game of the year and got hurt a little bit in that game, I reckon, based on the way that he was pulled so early. Then rebounded with his best game of the season, maybe the best game of his career to that point against the Bengals. Had a couple iffy games, but that was also in really bad weather with the Texans and Raiders. And then just got better every week, and then played his best game of the year, one of the best games of the year against the Titans. Played well against the Ravens, and then played well against the Giants. Really, after that Steelers game, besides a couple bad weather games, Baker Mayfield has played probably the best football of his career. And then other than the Jets game last week where he had no weapons, he's been playing at a top level here. I was really unsure of where his career was going after they got thumped in Pittsburgh earlier this year, but he's been really playing well ever since then.
Yeah, he's made sharper decisions. He's gotten the ball out faster. He's been able to be more selective with the times when he decides to leave the pocket and scramble. That's allowed the offensive line to have a lot more trust in him and knowing where he's going to be, and that he's stayed in the pocket more and he's had more time too, and that certainly helps. And then of course you got all those weapons. Even with Beckham going down, you still have Landry, of course, and you got an Austin Hooper who's had a huge year, and you got running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield. So he's had a lot of help, but that isn't to take away from what he's been able to accomplish this season, which is, well, it looks more like his rookie season and even a step
better than that. And I compare him more to hopefully eventually like a Drew Brees is what I would like to see him become, is more of that pocket passer. And that's really something that he's emulated more these last several weeks.
Interesting, because I know there were a lot of questions about him mid-season, which is why I always think that evaluation of quarterback needs at least like 20 games, probably closer to 30 games. And now that he's emerging from this, it looks like he's finally figured things out, and that's great for him and great for the team as we move forward here. Because obviously, there was a stretch early on in the year where he maybe wasn't playing his best, and there were some questions. But I always thought it was kind of strange that when Beckham Jr. went down with that injury in that first Bengals game, it's like he's played his best football since then. Do you think that Beckham going down? Do you think that it was just it's just been a bad fit with OBJ, and like he's not having to worry about the go-to guy, he doesn't have to force the ball to people as much, or do you think it's just a fact of maybe he just got hot when he got hurt? That was just random chance.
I think it's somewhat random. Honestly, I think we've seen Mayfield play extremely well with Beckham and Landry in the lineup together. Now, there is something to be said for, and you make a good point, forcing the ball, forcing it to Beckham, who we know he's quite the character. He wants his touches. He wants to get out in space and get the ball in his hands. And there may be something to that, and I shouldn't discredit that. At the same time, I think Mayfield figured it out. And with or without Beckham, I think there would have been a similar result. Just because I don't see a looser, more free Mayfield. I see a sharper Mayfield. I see a Mayfield who's making quicker decisions and staying in the pocket and staying more disciplined and knowing when to throw the ball away. I don't see a Mayfield who's no longer forcing the ball, which would be the case if Beckham was the only issue. I see a Mayfield just more sharp and better prepared. And I think a lot of that goes back to Monday through Saturday. And even the coaches speak of how much he's improved in that facet of the game. So I think it's somewhat coincidence. But, I'm not sure there could be an element of now not having to worry about getting OBJ his touches. That part of it doesn't hurt. It may hurt, though, missing a weapon like Beckham. So I'm not saying that it's a good thing that Beckham is down, but it's definitely that part of it could be a positive. You're right about that. But mostly I just give Mayfield credit for being more prepared and just making better decisions and quicker decisions.
Alrighty, let's kind of turn focus now to this game. John, I wanted to mention to you that in terms there's only been one player the Steelers have announced that is going to sit, and that's Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback. But I think it would be prudent to mention to you that center Marquise Pouncey, guard David DeCastro, linebacker TJ Watt, and defensive lineman Cameron Hayward all have not practiced on Wednesday and Friday this week with a non-injury related designation, which to me tells me they're most likely going to sit. Now, that's not official, but that would be what Austin and I are led to believe. Is that correct, Austin?
Yeah. I think that those guys will sit. The only one, I think David DeCastro might play. I'm thinking he might, because comparatively, I'm pretty sure Marquise Pouncey got the entire week off.
Oh, I should clarify. Hayward practiced on Thursday, and DeCastro's practiced on Thursday and Friday. So
I don't know.
What we know is
this is pretty good.
We know that Ben Roethlisberger, Chris Boswell, and Terrell Edmonds, the starting safety, quarterback, and kicker, are all going to be out. And it looks like TJ Watt and Marquise Pouncey will be out. We're not sure about anyone else. So that's at least 4 starters in our kicker right there. Deontay Johnson also has an illness, so who knows what that is. That could potentially be a COVID-related issue. But as far as that goes, knowing that they're going to be without their quarterback and starting center, at least, John, I wanted to get your thoughts just briefly on what you think that this game is going to be for the Steelers, how you think they might play. Obviously, there's a drop-off from Ben Roethlisberger to Mason Rudolph, and nothing is guaranteed, but I would have to think that the Browns would have a pretty good chance to win this game on Sunday, given that fact.
Yeah, and that's why I'd be optimistic about it. But at the same time, you talk about those 4 starters and probably several more as well. But there are other players that are just as competent, especially on that defense. If they do end up playing some starters on the defense, it's not like this is an entire second unit that out there this weekend. So I don't completely dismiss that. And like you said, I mean, you still have capable backups too. I mean, Mason Rudolph has played NFL games. We're talking about somebody, in my opinion, a lot more competent than a guy like Duck Hodges, who came in was a flash in the pan. And now Mason Rudolph is a career NFL backup quarterback. So I mean, it's one of those games where you can't just take anything for granted. Even if you have starters playing backups or whatever the matchups are, you still have to look at them individually. And that Steeler defense is one of the strongest in the league. And obviously, I mean, you could say, oh, they're not playing for anything. I mean, they still are. They're playing a division rival. Some of these guys are playing. This is their one chance to impress. In week 17, they know that they're not going to get much time in the playoffs. They haven't gotten much time all year. So there is a lot on the line, and I think the Steelers will play well. But like you said, I'm optimistic just because it is a big drop-off down to Mason Rudolph, who's clearly a backup quarterback, and the Browns' pass rush, if they can get going, can make a big difference right there and hold the Steelers hopefully to less than 20 points, which hopefully for on my end anyway, which would be a big victory for them. And we saw it last year in that Thursday night game, how well that Browns defense played. So I'm optimistic, but yeah, like I said, it's you can't take anything for granted.
So I would expect a relatively simple game plan from the Browns in this one. I'm curious if you'd agree with me. I just think that, like you kind of laid it out, their 11 are probably going to be better than the Steelers' 11 given what's going on. So I would think that they're not going to try to do anything too crazy in this one.
Well, and the game plan on offense starts and ends on the ground. And on defense, it starts and ends with the pass rush. So, yeah, I think it's a fairly simple game plan. I think it's let's try to do what we do best. And as long as we do what we do best, it's going to be good enough. And that's the game plan.
All right, I gotcha. That being said, can you give us one kind of thing that you're going to be looking for in this game? And I know it could be easy to say Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph. If you want to go with that, that's fine. Or if you want to go with something else, you're welcome to say you're looking at something else a little differently. Like maybe something you want to look at, oh, the Browns maybe haven't done this great this year. I want to see if they can do this better before a potential playoff game.
Well, Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph is certainly interesting. It's certainly got to be one of the most awkward reunions in the history of sports. But let's face it, that would be more of a storyline if there weren't playoff implications in this game. There are playoff implications, and that's why I'm looking for the offensive line play of the Browns against the defensive line of Pittsburgh, which even a backup defense line, if that is the case, and they may play some starters, as you guys were saying, it may not be all backups. It's a critical matchup, and the first quarter is going to be so telling in this one. I think it's going to come down to whether or not the Browns can run the ball early, not necessarily those huge chunk plays that you're going to end up seeing on the highlights, because they will get a couple of those. Can they run it consistently for 5+ yards on first down, or are the Steelers going to win the battle in the trenches and stop them, after 1-2 yard gain on first down? Because that'll tell the rest of the story. Whether or not Mayfield, who's been more consistent in the pocket, he's been bad in third and long. He's been really good in second and third and manageable. So that's going to tell the story for the rest of the game. It's his first quarter offensive line play versus Pittsburgh's defensive line. Obviously, there's matchups on the other side of the ball that are important too, but that's the most important one that sticks out to me.
All right. And then just kind of how you think this game is going to go, and give me a final score prediction.
Oh, well, you're killing me here, guys. I have to predict my beloved Browns making the playoffs, which to me is like, it's basically a curse. I mean, I'm basically putting the kibosh on them. But if I'm gonna look at this from an objective point of view, which I'm sure I'm supposed to do, right? I would have to say that the Browns 11 are better than the Steelers 11 in this game. Not if there ends up being a rematch in the playoffs like 6 days from this game, then we have a different story, because we have starters playing for the Steelers and we have a whole different conversation. But in this game, the Browns are paper stack up better than the Steelers. They should win. The Steelers will score. The Browns will score. Neither team is going to run away with this in the first half, but because the Steelers backups are still very competent. But the Browns running game should produce enough to give Mayfield some play action opportunities and get some plays down the field with receivers back finally, and they should win this game. I would have to go 27-16.
Alrighty, John. Well, you did allude to it. There's a strong possibility that this is not just the second time these two teams could meet. They could very well be playing again the following week in the AFC wildcard playoffs. And if that is the case, we'd very much like to have you back on for a third time this season. You'd be spoiling us by doing so, but we'd be very happy.
And we'd love it.
Yeah, we're all for it, man. And we thank you again for coming on and having this interview with us. It's always nice having you on, and I hope you get to enjoy the game. And like I said, we'll see if it ends up happening, but we'll have to get together at some point here, even if it's after the season and it's been too long. But should be a fun game. I can't remember the last time. I mean, I guess 2007 would have been the last time there was this much at stake for the Browns in the last week of the season.
I mean, that's debatable, because you did have an 0-15 team going up against the Steelers that 1 week. So, I mean, yeah, but no, you're right. As far as playoff implications are concerned, you're right. It's been that many years and then some, because they're, obviously the last time it actually went the Browns' way was in 2003. But yeah, no, this game should be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping for a rematch, guys. I don't know about you, because you gotta, I'm sure you're trying to win this game and potentially lock up a better seat in the AFC playoff picture. But I'm sure hoping for a rematch and that we can do this again. And really, really glad that you guys had me on. It's always great talking with you.
John, thank you so much.
Great having you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll talk to you next time. But until then, enjoy the game, and we'll be right back on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you very much, John. Take care, buddy.
Bye.
All right, Austin. Welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. We just listened to our interview with John Gehring here, and now that we've gotten his perspective on the Cleveland Browns as they approach what is not necessarily a do-or-die game, but for practical purposes is a very important game for them. The Browns win and they're in right now. They could still make it if they lose, but they're going to need help if that is the case. So, obviously, with the Steelers resting certain players, including Ben Roethlisberger, you have to like the Browns' chances straight up in this one, but there's still a decent amount to talk about, including, I think, the biggest story is that of backup quarterback Mason Rudolph. This is probably the biggest game of his entire career, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it might be his last chance to demonstrate that he can be the heir to Ben Roethlisberger. It's a lot for him. It really means a lot. I'm about ready to give up on him, but I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll show something in this game that'll make me change my mind. I don't believe that he is going to be the next great quarterback, but I mean, he's basically playing for his NFL career. Not necessarily. I'm sure another team, even after he's done, might give him like a chance. But yeah, he's playing for his career, really.
this is basically his last best chance to show that he belongs as a starter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I guess what are you expecting to see from him? What do you want to see from him this year after what we saw last year?
So I'm hoping that the Steelers try and force him to throw deep a little bit more in this game to prove that he could do it. We saw him do it at OSU when he was there with James Washington. I'd like to see him be able to do it at the NFL level to make reads past the 10-yard line and especially in the middle of the field. I not only was throwing deep a problem last year when he was starting and Devlin Hodges was starting, throwing deep and at the middle of the field was a problem. It felt like there was nothing across the middle of the field because they weren't reading it properly. They weren't really good at throwing into traffic. So I'm hoping that the Steelers try and test him, force him to make those kind of throws to see if he can actually do it and try and see if he's grown at all. That's what I'm looking for from him in this game.
Yeah, I want to see him just, show us what he's got. Let it rip, give us all opportunity to see that he's really got what it takes. And, kind of like what Devlin Hodges did in his first action last year, where he just kind of let it go. And, yeah, he didn't play well for stretches last year, but I think he also showed us some things last year. The problem is we didn't see enough consistently, and we didn't see that defining trait that shows, oh, okay, this guy can do it. With Justin Herbert, you see it. Even with Joe Burrow, you see it. I'm not sure that we've seen enough from Tua just yet, but he's only played a little bit. But you want to see definitive action from guys, some definitive trait, and we haven't seen that from Mason Rudolph just yet. And
nothing good so far.
No, not on a consistent basis, but you could also definitely make the argument that he was through a lot last year. The Myles Garrett situation alone was a lot, and he struggled after that. He got benched, but he also played his two best games of the year coming off the bench against Seattle and against the New York Jets. He played his two best games of the year. He suffered a season-ending shoulder injury. He suffered a very ugly-looking concussion. And remember, he was throwing to guys consistently like Johnny Holton and Tevin Jones. Like, those were his receivers for a decent portion of last season. And he was dealing with a playbook that was not at all up to times and without, sans Matt Canada in 2019. So, all that being said, I'm not excusing the fact that he didn't play well, but I'm also pointing out, and I think that you'd agree, Austin, that he didn't have a ton of help last season either.
No, playing with Tevin Jones and Johnny Holton is not great. And Deontay Johnson was in his rookie season, so you'd think Deontay Johnson probably improved going into this season. I think that he should have a much better cast around him. You think he also has a better tight end in terms of receiving now, and with Eric Ebron, and you have Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald. So hopefully that makes a difference for him going into this game, weapons-wise, that he can use them effectively. And honestly, you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for, you kind of compared him to this slightly. You said, I'm looking for him to play like Jared Goff. If he could play like Jared Goff, that would be ideal. Because that's where I think his ceiling's at. Like, he could be a Jared Goff.
I'm trying to see if I can find some more measurables that compare them real quick. As far as the rest of the offense goes, is there anything else you want to see from them?
Nothing in particular. I'm very excited to hopefully see some more Anthony McFarland. We're probably going to see more Jalen Samuels, let's be real here. I know Mike Tomlin said this is not a preseason game, but I'm hoping that we do get to see some of the backups get a little bit more playing time. I like that because I would like to see what we have in McFarland. I'm excited to see maybe Carlos Davis play some more snaps. He's been playing snaps. I want to see Antoine Brooks. Antoine Brooks was a guy that I was interested in because I didn't know what position he was going to be coming out of college, whether it be inside linebacker and safety. I'd like to see him get some reps on meaningful snaps too. So, I'm looking for, basically to sum up on, I kind of went off topic because I was talking about guys I want to see. The point is I want to see some of the guys that don't get a lot of snaps get some more snaps and see what the Steelers have in their depths, because they're about to have to go through a rebuild, and it's going to be nice to know if you have maybe something a little bit promising behind the guys that are leaving.
So Mason Rudolph and Jared Goff grade pretty similarly, and trying to get the, here we go, passing pressure. I'm trying to get the statistics here. They ran pretty close. Goff ran a 4.82 and Rudolph ran a 4.9 at the combine. So they're pretty similar. Jared Goff's rookie season, he played only about 125 snaps less than Mason did in that year, and Goff was even worse than Mason Rudolph was in terms of PFF grading, to give you an idea.
That's crazy. That's wild.
Goff was really bad his rookie year with Jeff Fisher. Rudolph was at his best when he wasn't pressured. If he was under pressure, he was horrible, basically. You know, the one thing I remember most about Mason Rudolph's rookie season was that his pocket presence was just awful.
Oh yeah, he had no idea what was going on around him. He was taking sacks like crazy.
Devlin Hodges did that as well. Just a bad situation. And remember, he's probably not going to have Marquise Pouncey, might not have David DeCastro as well. And I don't know if they're going to sit Deontay Johnson because of the illness and the fact that he was banged up last week. There's a possibility he could be going out there without a lot of guys. But I think all that being said, if I'm him, I'm slinging it around the yard in this game, just giving it all I've got.
Yeah, you got to prove it. That even if it's not with the Steelers, you got to prove that you deserve a contract. You deserve to be given another chance elsewhere. You know, so it means a lot to him to be go out there and do well.
As we've seen with Josh Rosen, you don't get a ton of chances.
No, and Josh Rosen was a first-round pick, a top 20 pick. He wasn't given much of a chance at all. So Mason Rudolph's got to take the chances he's got.
And the Browns' defense, that front line is very aggressive and ferocious, but like John mentioned, the back end, there could be something to deal with there. So I'd very much like to see Rudolph try to take advantage of that. And then in the ground game, do you make any attempt to try to reestablish any sort of ground game, even though you are going to be sans Pouncey and maybe DeCastro as well? I would at least try, personally.
I honestly, it doesn't really matter to me because I'm assuming you're not really using James Conner as much, maybe. So to me, it doesn't really make a difference because those are not going to be the guys that you need to get going anyway. But since you're not even going to have the backup offensive line, it would be nice to see a ground game, but I'm not particularly worried about establishing the run in this game.
What do you think is a likely offensive output in this game?
I don't think the Steelers top 350 total offensive yards, personally. I think with the lack of offensive line, with Mason Rudolph, I don't believe it. In the few snaps I saw Mason Rudolph play, I don't believe he's made any improvement. And then the backup running backs don't inspire anything into me. Maybe James Conner will be playing, but I'm not expecting much. So I think 350 is probably where I'm sitting for total yardage. And that's not actually terrible, 350 total yards. I'll take that. It's just, it's really because it's going against a secondary that's pretty messed up right now. I mean, they're down like all their starting safeties because of COVID and injuries and stuff. I mean, they're getting Ronnie Harrison back, but other than that, it's just like they don't have Denzel Ward to play cornerback there. It's pretty banged up.
I'm doing whatever I can to fix the short yardage ground game in this one.
That'd be nice. I'm sure they'd. This could be the week we see a quarterback sneak because they don't care about Mason Rudolph getting hurt. That'd be messed up. If they go by, we don't want our quarterback to get hurt, and then they do it with Mason Rudolph.
It would just be saying aloud what we already know.
Yeah.
Although I will say in the playoffs, I think Ben might do that. He might take a sneak just because everything's on the line.
Maybe teams won't expect it either. If you don't run a quarterback sneak all year, basically, it might be unexpected. It might be it's usually a good play call even when teams expect it. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the Steelers do.
Elsewhere, let's see. I expect to see a big rotation at receiver. Not a lot of guys playing more than like 30 snaps. I expect to see rotation at tight end. I expect to see rotation at running back. I think what's a reasonable output as far as points go? Do you think 20 points is reasonable for this offense?
Yeah, I think they could put up 20. It's going to be tough, but I think they could put up 20.
I think the big thing is, can the defense give them a couple turnovers?
Yeah, that should help. I mean, we saw last year against the 49ers, 5 turnovers wasn't enough to barely put up 20. So,
and that was with nearly a quadruple explosive play from Juju too.
Yeah, so it's pretty tough. We're gonna have to see if Mason Rudolph has grown, which again, I don't feel like he has, but I mean, I hope to be wrong. I hope that he is better this year, but regardless, I think 20 is a solid number for them to put up. I kind of hope Deion Kane plays. I love Deion Kane.
I think he's supposed
year.
to. I think he's supposed to.
Yeah, I hope he gets elevated. I know that the rules are funky, and they might be like, no, we're not going to elevate Deion Kane in case we have an injury and we need him in the playoffs. But, yeah, I hope they do. And
I don't know.
You're right.
I can't take anything from the snaps Mason's played this year to say whether he's improved or not. He's been a part of 21 snaps, and I think 5 of them are kneel downs. 6 of them are kneel downs. And he's thrown 5 passes this year. So,
boy.
I don't know.
Exciting.
I guess we'll see. On the defensive side, I mean, you're probably going to be without Hayward. You're going to be without Watt. You might not be without anyone else. I expect you're going to see a lot of guys like Wormley, Buggs, Davis, Henry Mondeau. I think you're going to see a lot of those guys. Should see a lot of Cassius Marsh, and if he's healthy, which it looks like he's going to be, Ola Adaney, I would think. Yeah, Adaney was a full participant. You should see those guys a lot. I'd try to keep Vince Williams and Avery Williamson off the field if possible, but there really aren't a lot of bodies there. So it looks like Marcus Allen's going to be good to go. And, I focus on stopping the run and just look out for play action boots and just double Jarvis Landry and take your chance with everyone else.
I honestly think that Vince is going to probably play the entire game. I think that Vince is, because you have to have a guy that's calling the defensive plays, and so you're either looking at Vince or Avery Williamson likely playing almost the entire game. So unless you're rotating who's calling the plays between Vince and Avery, but I think that Vince is going to be a guy that doesn't get to sit because of what he has to do.
I would certainly understand that as well. What do you think about this defense, though? I still think that it's going to be a solid unit, and I think the biggest issue would be the defensive line. I think that they could get moved a little bit, but I think that they will grudgingly give up points in this one.
You said the defensive line, or did you say just the defense as a whole? I missed that.
Mostly the defensive line, I think, is where they'll be missing the most people.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they have behind them, because Henry Mondeau's gotten actually a few snaps this year. So has Chris Wormley. So they are definitely going to be downgrading quite a bit, going from Tuitt and Hayward and stuff like that. Tuitt might be playing. We'll have to see with that. But regardless, I am excited to see what these guys can do. Wormley was playing well with the Ravens. Not like a flashy guy, but he's a good run stopper. So I think that they'll struggle. We saw them struggle to line up. We saw Davis struggle to line up last week. So we'll just have to keep an eye and watch and see how they do.
And then special teams, no Chris Boswell. Could be all Jordan Berry, or maybe Jordan Berry and Corliss Waitman.
Yeah, for something so minimal, it's so interesting to see what the Steelers are going to do. Well, if Boswell gets put on IR, we kind of know that injury is really bad and he can't continue for the year, because basically they wouldn't be able to get him back. So, apart from that, it's going to be interesting to see if they use Waitman, they use Berry, if they just go for 2 instead of kicking anything in this game, because it doesn't matter. Realistically, you could go for 2 every play, because you're trying to win. You don't want the Browns to have an easy path to the playoffs, but going for 2 was Tomlin's thing back in 2015. So maybe we bring that back. I don't know.
I'd do it. Why not? I'd just punt, and I'd go for it. And if you have to try to, for whatever reason, if you're in a position for a game-winning field goal, just line Berry up to try to do it for shits and giggles.
Yeah, dude, you might be able to hit it. Who knows?
All right, I think we have this thing pretty wrapped up. Then we can get to our NFL picks.
Yeah, I think we're good with that. So let's go to our NFL picks.
All right, Dolphins at Bills. There's no guarantee that Sean McDermott's going to be resting starters, from what I've heard, but even that being the case, I think that they ultimately will, and the Dolphins need this game to get in. So I like the Dolphins +3 to win outright. They're Buffalo's -3 at home, by the way.
because the Dolphins have a weird struggle going on with their offense, I'm going to pick the Bills to cover regardless. The Dolphins' rotation at quarterback and offense is just confusing, and they really should have just never started Tua this year. They should have rolled with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Might have gotten them an extra win, too. But I'm going to pick the Bills to cover because they are stunting Tua's growth over there and doing a bunch of weird stuff.
The Ravens in a win in your in scenario at the Cincinnati Bengals, winners of 2 straight. The Ravens are getting 13 points on the road. I will take the Ravens to cover. I think they'll blow out the Bengals and comfortably cruise into the playoffs.
Give me the Ravens to cover as well. I don't think the Bengals compete in this game.
Vikings at the Lions, 2 teams out of it. This will not be a fun one to watch. The Lions are in transition mode. They, don't have their quarterback. They don't have this. They don't have that. The Vikings, Dalvin Cook's going to go wild in this one. So I'll take Dalvin Cook and the Vikings -7.
I will have to tend to agree with you. The Lions are just in a bad state. I'll pick the Vikings to cover.
The 2-13 Jets, winners of 2 straight at the 6-9 New England Patriots. New England's getting 3 at home. I like New England to cover here.
Because I'm so close, and because I feel it in my heart, I'm going to pick the Jets +3. I really think that the Jets aren't that good, and I think that New England isn't as bad. New England's on a bad stretch, but I want to take it. I'm going to take Jets +3 in that game.
Cowboys at Giants. This game between 2 teams with a combined 19 losses. Dallas favored by 2.5 on the road. The winner of this game will be watching the Sunday night game intensely, as the winner will have an opportunity to win the NFC East. Amazingly, the Giants could win the NFC East with a 6-10 record if they win, and then Philadelphia beats Washington in the Sunday night capper. So I'm rooting for the Giants. I want to see the Giants win it with the 6-10 record, so I'll take them +2.5 here.
That'd be really funny. I'm going to pick Dallas to cover and also go in with a 6-10 record. This division's such a sad little joke. This is incredible.
Well, if they win, they'd be 7-9.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I looked at the wrong scores. Still, I'll pick Dallas at 7-9.
7-9 is at least like the edge of respectability because you're like 1 win away from 500. If you're 6-10, you've lost double-digit games.
Heck yeah, you did.
So that's a huge difference. 4-11 Falcons at the 10-5 Buccaneers. Tampa Bay is -7 here. Are the Buccaneers locked into the 5 seed?
They can't take it from the Saints, I'm pretty sure. They can't
No.
take the division.
No,
I'm pretty
they
sure
can't.
they are. Because, what's it called? The Cardinals, Bears, and Rams are definitely a game back. Because they're 8-7.
Wait.
They're 8-7, all of them.
The Rams are 8-7 too?
Oh, no, the Rams are 9-6.
So the Rams...
Okay, no, they don't have the 5 seed locked up, but I don't know if they have... they might have the tiebreaker over the Rams. I'm not sure.
the Rams beat them on Monday night. So this is actually an important game for them because the winner of this of the 5 seed will get to play the NFC East division winner. So that's actually a big deal. That's almost like a free pass to the second round.
Crazy.
So I will take
Okay.
I'll take the Falcons +7. They're a scrappy team, and even though they won't win because they can't win games like this, I think they'll keep it close.
I'm going to pick the Buccaneers to cover. I think that the Buccaneers just absolutely demolish them. That's what I'm going with.
Into the 4 o'clock window, the Packers needing a win to secure the number 1 seed at the 8-7 Bears, who need to win to get in. Well, I don't know if they need to, but they're trying to win to get into the playoffs. The Bears have beat up on some really bad defenses, making Trubisky look good. I think the Packers absolutely annihilate them in this one and win by maybe 20 points.
Yeah, I think the Packers cover and take the Bears out of the playoffs. The Packers are going to have double reason, take out a division opponent and just to win and try and get a better seeding or maintain the number 1 seed. I forget, are they sitting at the number 1 seed right now?
The Packers, yes, they
Sitting
are. They are.
Yeah, so they have to maintain that. So Packers cover pretty easily.
What was I going to say? That was a 6-point line, by the way. Raiders at the Broncos, two teams out of the playoffs. The Vegas Raiders are 2.5-point favorites on the road. I'm going to take the Broncos plus 2.5 in this one.
Give me the Raiders to cover. The Broncos team is a mess, and they need to go into next year and hopefully hope for the best.
1-14 Jaguars at the 10-5 Colts. The Colts are 2 touchdown favorites. I like the Jaguars plus 14. That's their only win this year was against the Colts.
I really wish you picked the Colts to cover. I was really leaning towards the Jaguars plus 14. Jaguars are locked into the number 1 pick, so winning doesn't do anything to mess that up. All that does is give them a chance to knock their division opponent out of the playoffs, and I think that the Jaguars are going to play their hearts out with that in mind. They have nothing to lose, but they only have stuff to gain. They can knock their division opponent out of the playoffs. So I am picking the Jaguars plus 14. I think the Jaguars could win this game.
No Patrick Mahomes in this one. The Chiefs resting starters with home field advantage locked up. The Chiefs are 3.5-point underdogs at home, and I'll take the Chargers and the Justin Herbert show to continue.
Give me the Chiefs plus 3. 3.5. I think that even their backups should be better than the Chargers. Just to let you know, I don't know if you saw, Chargers are without Keenan Allen because of COVID-19. He has Ronies.
Good to know. Cardinals at Rams. 8-7 Cardinals at the 9-6 Rams. John Walford, we'll get to that a bit later, is starting. Has never, I don't believe he's ever thrown an NFL pass. Will be starting with Jared Goff out due to a thumb surgery. The Cardinals are thus 3-point favorites. I'm going with the AAF legend John Walford and the Rams plus 3 in this one.
The NFC West is weird, so you're probably going to be right. But on paper, the Cardinals should blow out the Rams like 40-3. Okay, the Rams defense is untouched, so they're still pretty good. But they should blow out the Cardinals. They should blow out the Rams 20-0. I'm picking the Cardinals to cover, even though it's probably against my best bet. But you're down Jared Goff, you're down Cooper Kupp. You still got some really solid receivers even without Kupp. It's just I can't see them keeping up with the Cardinals. Give me the Cards.
Seahawks at the 49ers, another NFC West showdown. The Seahawks are favored by 6.5 here. Is there still an outside shot that the Seahawks get the 1 seed? I think there is.
Did them and Green Bay play? Hold on, I have the playoff machine open. If I just switch Green Bay to losing, if I switch New Orleans to losing as well, yes. If New Orleans loses and Green Bay loses and Seattle wins, they can get the 1 seed.
This is interesting because they're playing at 4 o'clock. The Saints are playing earlier. I'll still take the Seahawks to cover, but I think that the Saints game and Packers game will have a lot in determining if Russell Wilson and them play or not.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, they need the Bears and they need the Panthers to win over the Packers and Saints, respectively. It's not a high likely scenario, but it is possible. Their seeding is definitely up to be mixed up, basically. Because even if it's not playing for much because the Steelers are doing the same thing, but they could get the 2nd seed. They're obviously locked at the 3rd seed because the Giants are not going to catch up to them. But yeah, they're basically playing. They could be playing for the 1st or 2nd seed depending on if the Saints or Packers lose. That being said, the NFC West, my heart tells me to pick the 49ers plus the points, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks covering. My heart's wrong.
Saints at Panthers.
I'm going with big brain.
The Panthers are 6.5-point dogs at home. The Saints need this game. I think that they're going to... Well, actually, again, the Packers are playing earlier. I'll take the Saints in this one, but a lot to do with the earlier games. We'll see.
Yeah, the Saints might end up benching people. We'll have to see, but the Panthers don't have a running back currently because Mike Davis is hurt. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. They have a running back on their roster. It's just not someone I trust. You know what? I'm going to say the Packers win early. Saints bench their players and tell them to pay Panthers plus 6.5.
All right. Titans at Texans. Did I hear somewhere that Deshaun Watson is supposed to rest?
I have not heard that, but that's interesting. That's an interesting development. I have not heard that. That doesn't mean that's not true.
I don't trust the Titans' defense. I'll take the Texans plus the 7.5-point spread that they are currently underdogs in.
The Titans have been really weird. They have only been coming alive in the second half of games. I will still pick them to cover here because the Texans have obnoxiously underperformed the past 3 games.
The Sunday night cap between the Washington football team and the Philadelphia Eagles. Washington is -2 on the road. I'll take Washington to cover and win the division at 7-9.
Give me the Eagles +2 to wrap it up. I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to have another big game.
All right, let's transition into some NFL news. Where do you want to start?
We could talk about Jared Goff on why Wolford is starting. So Jared Goff got surgery on his thumb after breaking it against the Seahawks game. AF legend John Wolford will make his start with a playoff berth on the line for the Rams. If the Rams make it to the postseason, Goff is expected back. But regardless, even if they lose, they're not necessarily out of the playoffs. If the Bears lose, they are still in. And it's highly likely that the Bears are going to lose to the Packers. So this game might not matter for the Rams. I mean, if something amazing happens and the Bears somehow beat the Packers, then they might be in a little bit of trouble. But, it's still interesting.
We'll see how much of a genius Sean McVay really is.
Yes, sir. Apart from that, Atlanta Falcons interim head coach Raheem Morris is apparently interviewing for the Falcons' official head coaching gig for next season. He's come in and actually done pretty decently with the guys he's had. He almost just beat the Chiefs, obviously, last week, which would have been a huge help to his bid for becoming the next head coach. We'll have to see what that goes on with. Do you have anything to say about that?
I just doubt it. I think they're going to completely blow it up.
Yeah, me too. I don't think they keep anything the same. Then, sort of Steelers news, but Mason Rudolph was talking to the media today, and he said he hasn't heard from Myles Garrett, but he is open to talking to him. And if Garrett comes up to him in the game, he will talk. There's not really much else to say about that. I mean, I said my piece. I feel pretty confident that, despite what everyone says, I don't think what Myles Garrett claimed happened. Because I don't think the way Myles Garrett talks about Mason Rudolph is not how you would expect someone to talk about someone that, said what he said. So I think that this was all a debacle and for no reason. But do you have anything to add to this?
I think you'll either see them talking before the game with much cameras around, or you won't see them talk at all.
Yeah. It's probably going to be nothing. It's basically nothing. It's not like Mason Rudolph asked himself this question. Obviously, this is the big deal because Mason Rudolph is starting against the Browns, so this is the easy narrative to attack if you're the media and you want to get something out. You want to say, oh, no, I'm gonna try and throw right at his face. So, that's what they're trying to get. It's not going to happen, though. But anyhow, life goes on. Other news, Brandon Cooks says he won't accept any more trades. The man has been traded so much in his career. I respect him wanting to hunker down and stay in one spot. It sucks that he's chosen Houston when he's been in so many other great places like the Patriots, New Orleans, stuff like that. So, if he was on really good teams and now he's sticking with the worst one he's probably on, the Rams too. So, do you have anything to say about that?
It's obviously not his choice. He could still be traded, but I understand his frustration. Mans is frustrated. I would be too.
He's such an interesting player. He's been traded so many times, but still for so much draft capital every single time. The last time it came down a little bit, but still, it's always weird. Then Ravens punter Sam Cook, he has a 15-year consecutive game streak, and it's going to end because he was a close contact. Oh, no, he wasn't a close contact. He actually got Ronies. So he will not be playing in this game, unfortunately. So that streak is going to come to an end. And then another COVID positive. Alvin Kamara has tested positive for COVID. He's getting a second one, which is funny because this happened earlier in the year. One of the first scares for COVID before it was a real thing in the NFL. Alvin Kamara and his fullback had false positives. I remember this so clearly because there's going to be the first cases in the NFL. They had false positives on the way to a game, but they've found out to be false, so it didn't matter. This one might be. He's getting a second one, but we'll have to see. If he actually has Ronies, he's going to be out for this last game, which is somewhat important because they could be playing for the first seed, and also next game if he tests positive, which is going to be a postseason game, which is of course very important. So this is a big deal if this is for reals. Then the last bit of news. Did you want to cover the last bit of news?
Yeah. So normally we do the team history between the Steelers and Browns. And this game being potentially the game that could catapult the Browns into the playoffs for the first time since 2002, a time where they also played the Steelers in the playoffs. The last time that they played in the playoffs back in January of 2003, now 18 years ago, the only time the new Browns have done so. To give you an idea of how long ago that was, I found an article that would give some sports analogies, basically saying what happened at that time. Baseball, I think he was an outfielder. Jim Tomei hit 52 home runs for the Cleveland Indians. The USA shocked the world at the World Cup with a 3-2 victory over the heavy favorite Portugal. Kelly Clarkson won the first American Idol. Ohio State won a national championship over Miami, the U, who is terrible now. Michael Vick went to the Pro Bowl for the first time. The European Union adopted the Euro. Nokia had the best-selling cell phone with... definitely not anything like the phones of today. Friends and Everybody Loves Raymond were the top rated TV shows at the time. Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones and Spider-Man and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets were some of the top movies of the year. LeBron James was still in high school. Lose Yourself, the song by Eminem, was the top song in the world, I believe. And what else? Tommy Maddox was starting for the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger had just concluded his sophomore season at Miami of Ohio, to give you an idea how long ago that was.
So basically you're saying it's been a long time.
It's been a very long... That playoff game against the Browns was one of my earliest football memories. I was just, 6, 7 years old? Something like that? I'm trying to think. I'm not good at math, but it was a very long time ago, so... Quite a lot has changed since then. But with that said, are you ready to get into our bold predictions and X Factors? You want to go first?
Sure. So on offense, I'm going to pick James Washington. I've been waiting. I feel like I pick this every time Mason Rudolph starts, but I'm going to pick it again. I want the James Washington to Mason Rudolph connection to happen from the OSU days. So I'm picking James Washington to be my X Factor because I'm assuming he's going to get a lot of play at the wide receiver position. I'm sure it's going to be a mix of the wide receivers. We don't really have a lot of wide receivers to bench, but I think that he'll be the primary guy that's on most snaps. So I'm picking James Washington there. And then on the defensive side, I kind of went back and forth. I was thinking, who do I want? Because I don't really know who's going to be starting for this game and where. I am going to pick James Pierre. I think that he's going to get to play. I think because Joe Hayden's kind of on the older side, I think he's going to get a little bit some snaps off, and I'm excited about it. He got to see some defensive snaps earlier in the year, not a lot, but I'm going to go pick James Pierre for that, just because, really.
All right, I'm going to go with Benny Snell, the running back. I think he's going to get the most snaps at running back on Sunday, so I think it could be a big game for him. And on defense, I'm going to go with outside linebacker Alex Highsmith. I think he could have a big game as well. It could be a showcase game for him. So those are my X Factors. Can you give me your bold predictions, please?
So for bold predictions, I think that the Steelers get 8 sacks this game, reaching the coveted number of 60 sacks on the year. Steelers have been close every year, and they're 8 sacks off, which is tough. The Browns off in the past years, this might have been possible for real. Like, this wouldn't be a bold prediction. But the Browns' offensive line has played really, really well this year comparatively. They're probably getting Wyatt Teller back. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, they've only allowed 22 sacks on the year. Yes, they've only allowed 22 sacks on the year. So I think that's pretty hard to get, but I'm going to say that Steelers push hard for it. James Washington has a 150-yard game or more, and then James Pierre records his first turnover in the NFL.
All right, for mine, I'm going to have Benny Snell going with a 100-yard rushing game and 2 touchdowns. That's obviously very bold given the state of the Steelers' running game. I like Alex Highsmith to have a 3-sack game and an interception, and I have the Steelers scoring a special teams touchdown. I'll go with a kick return touchdown because that's just crazy these days. But, yeah, so all in all, Austin, how are you feeling about this game? The Browns are 9-point favorites right now at home.
So So, personally, I feel like the Steelers are going to make this somewhat of a game, but I think they still lose. I'm going to have the Browns winning 26-18, just barely covering to our standards. So, I mean, just barely not covering to our standards. So I'm going to be picking Pitt +9 in this game. How about you?
I think that this could be a really good showcase game for Mason Rudolph. This is my last chance for kind of believing in him, and I'll give him one more shot because I think last year was a lot. And I think that the Steelers' defense will play relatively well, but I think the Browns will be able to score their points in this game. And I think that they'll be able to come away with a close 27-24 victory. So I like the Steelers plus the 9 points in this one, Austin. So with that, I think we're all set to wrap this one up.
I think so too.
All right. If you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com, and you can find our episodes posted on SoundCloud and YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Austin, thanks for joining me, and we hope everyone enjoys Week 17 of the NFL season. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.